And this issue of unity is something that has been emphasized by Allah in the Quran, by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I know, brothers and sisters, most of you sitting here today, you are sick and tired of disunity. You're sick and tired of the different jama'at and the different hizbs and the different parties and the different groups bickering and arguing amongst each other about things that you perceive to be petty and insignificant. The people are divided along the lines of tribe, along the lines of color, along the lines of language. Even more absurd and even more ridiculous. It's insane. I think we Muslims are in a collective state of psychosis because we're proud to belong to a country that was a map drawn by the non-Muslims 40, 50 years ago. How insane is that? Zindabad, Pakistan. Zindabad, Pakistan. Pakistan is a country that was put there by the British. Maps drawn on the line. Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco. Lines drawn on maps by the French, by the Italians, by the British. Dividing us up into nations. And now we are screaming fanatically, rallying behind some flag that didn't even exist 100 years ago. Ready to fight for it and die for it. This is madness. This is sickness. This is something so far removed from what Allah revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's nothing but hizbiyah. It's nothing but another form of tribalism, of partisan spirit, about which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever calls for asabiyah, whoever calls for tribalism, and whoever fights for asabiyah, for tribalism, then they call and they fight and they die the death of jahiliyah. They die and they fight and they call for the death of ignorance, the time of ignorance. Yet these are the lines upon which we are divided. Nationalistic lines, tribalistic lines, sectarian lines. Yet Allah warned us in the Quran, many times in the Quran, about the danger of dividing into sects and groups. Indeed, He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as for those people who divide their deen into sects, the meaning of which is, as for those people who divide their deen into sects, you have nothing to do with them in the least. Their reckoning is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the Quran, Allah likened those people who divide the religion into sects and into groups. He likened them to the mushriks. And indeed it is one of the quality and the sifat and the attributes of disbelievers, that they divide the deen into sects. And we should be like one body, my brothers and sisters. That's how the Prophet ﷺ described this ummah, like one body. So if one part of this body hurts, if one part of this body suffers, if one part of this ummah is in pain, the whole body is restless. None of us should be able to sleep. None of us should be able to rest. This is the brotherhood and sisterhood of Islam, because we are the people of La ilaha illallah. We are the people who have decided and chosen to worship Allah, to single out Allah for worship. How can we really claim that we are people of Iman? How can we claim that we're people of Islam? And we don't care for our brothers and sisters in Islam. We don't care for them. We don't feel anything anymore when they suffer. This is how we become divided. And when we all know the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, فَتَصِّمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. We all know. فَتَصِّمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. This is the verse that is quoted again and again and again to remind us that we need to be united. فَتَصِّمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. Hold on together to the rope of Allah, bihablillah jami'an, all together, وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and don't be divided. Hang on to the rope of Allah. And what is this rope of Allah? What is the rope of Allah? This has been explained by the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith, an authentic hadith. The rope of Allah is Allah's book. The rope of Allah is Allah's book, which is suspended between the heavens and the earth. The rope of Allah is the Quran. It is the book of Allah. And it also, by extension, is the Sunnah. When we want to understand our deen, the book of Allah and the Sunnah come together. We don't separate between them in understanding our deen.